Good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us for our team project presentation on OCOGs. It's the Structural Design and Evolution through the lifespan of an Olympic project. Today, let me introduce my team. First of all, this is Stain, Rohit, and Kyung, and you'll hear from each of us today in different aspects of the presentation. And what we'll do is take you through a short overview of the presentation and our introduction, go through a little bit more deeply into the phases of our presentation, and then conclude and tell you about what's next. But first, so this is what we all see, and it's very familiar look for us, but what does that mean in terms of an organizing committee? So this is the lifespan of an Olympic project. It's essentially 84 months prior to games, or 7 years, and it goes all the way to games time. And I just want to focus on the foundation and planning phases of this, because that's really what pertains to our project, and you can see some things highlighted that we will expound upon in our presentation. And just to let you know, you'll hear the word OCOG a lot. That's an acronym for Organizing Committee for an Olympic Games. So the background of our project, the IOC provides resources to the host city once they've won the bid in the form of technical manuals, guides, a master schedule, and various knowledge transfer tools in Olympic Games knowledge management. The technical manuals at the moment are part of the host city contract and really go into specific subjects for different functional areas or departments of an OCOG. The guides are similar, but they really focus on best practice. So the technical manuals are the what, and the guides are more of the how and the why. The master schedule is a monitoring and planning tool that is used to outline all the deliverables in the host city contract, and it's just for an OCOG to track their progress and meet different milestones. And Olympic Games knowledge management tools include an extranet and specific games reports from past games and best practices from specific past games. So we have a lot of resources. There's a lot of different things that an OCOG can use in terms of establishing itself and growing through its lifespan. So there's a need for clarity, cohesion, and availability, especially in terms of people management. And people management is kind of the focus of our project today. So our mission was to help the IOC with the analysis of the technical manuals and guides from a people management perspective. And people management is workforce or human resources. The focus is on the structural design and evolution of 6 different organizing committees over their unique lifespans. And the ultimate goal is for the IOC to develop a toolkit for people management that's adaptable to each unique organizing committee. And to give you some context, Agenda 2020, that's the hot button these days, we found that recommendation 12 is the most relevant for our project in terms of reducing cost, reinforcing flexibility, and really developing and providing turnkey solutions to organizing committees in specific subjects like people management. So it really ties into a lot of what we researched and did in our project. So we had 3 project phases. The first phase was analysis. So we went through about 10,000 pages of technical manuals and guides and looked at them from a people management perspective. The second phase was a comparison of the organizational structures of the different OCOGs, and we looked at them not only between the OCOGs, but we compared it to what we found in the technical manuals and guides in terms of what positions were listed, hiring timelines, and what functional areas or departments were also listed in each of the guides and technical manuals. And the third phase was interviews with people management executives from the 6 OCOGs who also have experience in other multi-sport events. And we really asked them about the use and value of the resources that the IOC provides to an OCOG for its establishment and evolution. So I'll take you through the first phase, which is analysis of the TMM Guides. And so in those 10,000 pages, that comprised 33 technical manuals and 12 guides. And we looked at it from an HR or people management perspective. And we used the master schedule, which I mentioned before. It's the planning and tracking tool. we had an extract from the IOC that just focused on the different functional areas and the positions in those functional areas. So we combed through and updated around 180 functions in this document. 120 we added new, and 60 of which we just updated and increased the value of information that was already there. We worked with the IOC pretty closely in developing a ranking system to assess the quantitative and qualitative data that we found in terms of people management. And the quantitative was more about the richness and comprehensiveness of what we did find in each of the technical manuals and guides. And the qualitative was more about the structure and clarity and usability of what we found. So this is a representation of what we found across all TMs and guides, 45 in total. And there's a significant variation, and you can see our rankings. We have from low to high, 1 being low, 5 being high. So if it was ranked low, we didn't find a lot of information, and if it was ranked high, which you can see is pretty evenly distributed, then we found quite a bit of helpful information for people management. And you'll see similar here. This is qualitative. And again, you see the low ranking and the high, and we used a similar rating system. Now, the reason that we have so many low technical manuals or lowly rated technical manuals is that many of them are really short, and they don't have any people management information, so we had to give them 1. And those are like accreditation, protocol, Paralympics. They were all around 100 pages. So that's why you see the kind of variation between. So what makes an effective TMM guide? So what we found is that so clearly defined missions and objectives and responsibilities for each of the functional areas, milestone planning, so deliverables and certain dates that they had to achieve things by. Organizational charts were also really helpful. If the TM or guide had that, it was very clear about how to structure that certain department or functional area. And roles and responsibilities. A lot of TMs had really great job descriptions, and some had nothing on, say, the head of communications. So that was really interesting. And for us, we picked 3 technical manuals and guides that really represented these effectiveness standards. So NOC services, marketing and partner services, and brand protection. So now that I've kind of given you an overview of the project and the phase 1, Stain is going to take you through the comparison of the organizational charts and phase 3 of our project.
Phase 2.
Thanks.
So the second phase was about the comparison of the different organizational structures of each OCOGs. And in the scope, we had Vancouver until Tokyo, Vancouver 2010 until Tokyo 2020. So we looked at 6 OCOG structures and we compared the 6 OCOG structures. The scope was also limited to head of functional areas and above, so directors and head of functional areas. We looked at it from a global perspective. We looked at the global structure, but we also went more in detail and looked at how functional areas were grouped, were bundled, and the hierarchy of different positions. So I will just lead you through some general extracts of the organization charts, starting with Vancouver. As you see, you have in Vancouver, you have below the CEO, we have 5 different departments. And then we go to London. In London, you see a very flat structure, 17 directors, of which 10 directors are reporting to the CEO, so that's a very flat structure. Then if you move to Sochi, you also see that below the CEO we had 10 vice presidents and a bundle of functional areas reporting to each VP. Rio followed quite the logic IOC mentioned in its technical manuals, 6 departments, 6 logical departments with all the functional areas below. Going to Pyeongchang, Pyeongchang was quite hierarchical, 3 main departments and a lot of directors below. And Tokyo even went further. They have 10 bureaus, each led by an executive director, and below each executive director you had 29 senior directors, and below you had even an explosion of directors. So a lot of functions, and 5 years ahead of the Olympic Games, already 360 people are recruited for Tokyo, and that's more than double than London and Rio at the same time. when we then go more in depth and we look at the functional areas, there were also many differences. So the global structure was different, but also the detailed structures were different. Just to give you some examples, procurement. In half of the OCOGs, procurement was part of commercial, and the other half of the OCOGs, procurement is part of finance. To give you some other examples, transport broadcasting, and most of the OCOGs, these departments are part of the games department. If you go down to Rio, broadcasting, for example, is part of infrastructure. So there's really no similarity, there's really no coherence, let's say, about the organizational structure of each OCOG. And this was one of the questions we wanted to raise in our third phase. In the third phase of the survey, we want to raise why the differences existed. But before I go and jump to the third phase, I want to add, originally in the scope, we also need to look at the dynamic evolution. So we, on a year-on-year basis, from 7 years ahead of the games to the games, and compare the evolution between each OCOG. And we started with it. IOC provided a lot of organization charts, but as you see, so each column, let's say, is a year before the games, but we had a lot of charts missing. So we then decided with IOC that scope of the project we couldn't fulfill actually, because we missed charts to compare on a year-on-year basis from G-7 to games time. Just to mention that this was in the scope, but after agreement with IOC, we didn't fulfill that part of the project. So, as I said, we then had a survey. IOC provided us a list of 10 HR executives who had a very important experience from Vancouver up to Tokyo. And we interviewed them via phone or via Skype. And before interviewing them, we send them a questionnaire. So we can say that the interview itself was semi-structured. We followed more or less the content structure of the questionnaire we sent, but we let flexibility, or we allowed flexibility to treat also other topics. The 5 main topics we dealt with in our survey were the role those people had in the OCOG. How did they design the OCOG structure? How did they recruit it? To what extent they use the technical manuals in the design of their OCOG, and the interaction they had with IOC. These were the 5 main topics. So there were a lot of findings. There was a lot of outcome. We tried to bundle the most important ones together. Starting with technical manuals, there was a significant difference in the use of technical manuals. On the one side, you had the more eastern OCOGs, like Sochi, Pyeongchang, and Tokyo, which really went through the OCOGs quite thoroughly and used them in setting up their OCOG structure. On the other hand, you had Rio and even more London, who literally said, sorry, we didn't use technical manuals at all, because for us they were too extensive and too theoretical. And then we asked, of course, but how should the TMs be to be more usable? And they all said, instead of more theoretical point of view, it would be good that they would be more solution-oriented point of view, more why than what. Also now, as Chris said, TMs are part of the host city contract, so there's a lot of obligations inside, and that's why it's also a bit too theoretical. But apart from the technical manuals, we also asked about the interaction with IOC, and all of them agreed that the interaction with the IOC and the predecessors of previous OCOGs were very valuable, highly valuable. They use them a lot, they use the contacts a lot. However, that network of contacts could be more formalized and could be even extended in the future. Another outcome was about the full journey of an OCOG. Many interviewees comment that they started at the journey, but without knowing how many staff they needed to recruit at what stage, so they didn't have the full picture as of the start. In addition, there was a lot of technical manuals, a lot of guidelines to hire people in order to let them attend the previous Olympic Games as an observer program. And the two things together made that too much staff, and that was also an outcome of the interview of the survey, too much staff was hired too early in an OCOG. And that has, of course, budget consequences and also is detrimental for efficiency. So if the OCOG HR people could dispose of organization charts on a year-on-year basis with numbers of staff to be hired and the drivers why those numbers need to be hired at that stage. That could be very useful in the future. Another very important remark was that in an IOC you have people from different backgrounds, corporate backgrounds, government backgrounds. In Tokyo, Pyeongchang, 40% is government secondees. And also, the more people from a more informal sport backgrounds. Also, you have different nationalities, and to harmonize all those people together in one organization structure is a big challenge. IOC gives a lot of attention to the hard knowledge, but in the future, it was recommended that they should also look at the soft leadership skills. That would be also an asset for HR people in OCOGs. Two other challenges is attrition in some OCOGs, mainly where the Olympic Games are finding place at a remote place. There's a risk of attrition, people leaving before the games start. And our interviewees gave a lot of ideas actually to minimize the attrition rate. Promotion, in corporate world we have a lot of promotion. In OCOGs that's not really done, but there is ways to promote people. And that's a good idea, but also making sure at the people at the start that there is fees, that there is outplacement programs for after the games. That's also a very useful tool, and it is done more recently in OCOGs. Transition from planning to an operation phase is another challenge, and enhancing internal mobility, making people move around functional areas is also a tool to to make the transition smooth. And finally, we raised very open questions to them. First question being, can the structure of an OCOG being standardized? Can there be one structure for each OCOG? And all of them said no. There's too many political influences, first of all, in the design of a structure, and there's too many cultural differences. So standardizing is not a good idea. But we raised also another question: could it be possible that in the future, legally that might be more complex, but could it be possible that some functional areas on a continuous basis are organized by IOC, and we target more the technical areas as accreditation, as a technology? Could IOC organize these functional areas itself, and the other areas would then remain, of course, with the OCOG? And all of our interviewees thought that this was not a bad direction to think of in the future. And even some interviewees went further and thought of an OCOG more as a project management base, so being organized by a limited number of project managers, and then only the operational people hiring or the operational people when games time starts. So this was about phase 3, but now Kristen will wrap up all phases together.
Great, thanks, Dane. So I think we're short on time, so I'll try to make this quick. So at least I talk fast as an American. So basically what we found from phase 1, the analysis phase, and what was reinforced by the interviews was there is a need for intuitive and more usable resources. That goes along the lines of the quality of the content, which includes applicable examples and case studies to make the what more understandable. Usability, access, and cross-reference information, they're not very usable, and the access to some are not there. So, for instance, technology and security technical manuals don't exist. So, and those are huge drivers of an Olympic project. And the cross-reference information refers to the fact that a lot of the manuals refer to one another, but only in a general way. So some manuals are 400 pages. So you have one 200-page manual and one 400-page manual. You have to sift through both to get the full picture. Like Stain said, solution and best practice, more of the why and the how, and along with the what, to give a fuller picture. And the network building to enhance knowledge transfer throughout the process of an Olympic project. And phase 2 and 3, so phase 2 again was the organizational structure comparison, and what we found is that all structures are different. They're different from a design aspect, they're different from a hierarchical aspect, and there's no way to really standardize this throughout the different organization committees. People are hired too early, so they're very heavy in the beginning. So that might be something to consider for the future. Leadership and staff development, transition between planning and operations phases, those kind of go together in terms of managing change management, enhancing, making a more seamless process, and of course benefits for motivation and retention. So there has been progress already. So we met with the IOC last week for our final presentation, and we were informed that our work has been circulated and some of our tools are being applied already. And yesterday, I don't know if you saw, there was a press release given on the bid cities, and there's a paragraph in there exactly on the technical manuals and the resources that the IOC provide. So what's happening? Actively, the technical manuals are transitioning more into the guide format. So they're not going to be as obligatory. They'll be more best practice and solution oriented going forward. So right now we have what's being done. So we have recent practice and what's being done now, and that's evolving into the best practice. They've separated out the obligations from the technical manuals and made one document for those. So it's a little bit easier to reference. You don't have to go through 45 manuals to see what the overall obligations are in terms of the host city contract. And for the people management toolkit, that is being taken over by people at the IOC currently, and it's being developed. So it's a journey. The first steps have been taken, and we're really proud and thankful for the opportunity to provide this information and help the IOC on this project. And thank you all for your time and attention. And now we'll move to questions.